Hello there, my friend. Welcome to another episode of Talk Music Talk with Boice. I am Boice. This is my podcast you are listening to. Thank you so much for checking it out. If this is your first time listening to Talk Music Talk, it is a weekly music interview podcast where I have long-form conversations with people connected to music from different genres and different backgrounds, established and emerging, all genres, singers, performers, music therapists, music journalists. And speaking of music journalists, this episode features my conversation with Jenn Pelly, music journalist and a brand new author. Her debut book has just come out. It is the 126th edition in the 33 and a third series. That's a lot of numbers. On the post-punk band, the Raincoats. It's on their self-titled album, which came out in 1979 on Rough Trade. Jenn is also an editor at Pitchfork since 2011. In this conversation, great talk with her. We get insight into the writing of the book. We also talk about why this album, why the Raincoats, and when she first heard their music and how their being an all-female band impacted her. In addition to talking about the album and the book, we also talk about the history of the Raincoats and also Jenn's background in carving out her career as a music journalist. Great conversation with Jenn. Great book. You will enjoy it. Here it is. Without further ado, my conversation with Jenn Pelly. Enjoy. The NPR 150 Best Albums by Women.
Yes.
Raincoats, 74. You were quoted.
Oh, yeah. Thanks. Shouts to Laura Snapes for that.
Yeah,
I appreciated
you got quoted.
it.
74, did that feel inaccurate? Way higher up? It's between Donna Summer and a Stuttgart Belter, which seemed like...
I think that's pretty good.
That's a good...
Yeah. I mean, I think that the Raincoats are a band who you wouldn't typically consider or think of to be canonized.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're even in there, I think, is really wonderful. In terms of numbers, for all of the talk I've done in the book about the Raincoats and not really thinking about hierarchies, I feel like the idea of even thinking about a number is so like antithetical to the Raincoats in general.
Yeah, that would be.
But yeah, I think that list is great, and all the people who worked on it, I think, did a really nice job, kind of offering an alternative canon that provoked a lot of really important dialogue. And yeah, I was honored to be quoted in the Raincoats brief. So
Did you know in advance? Like, how advanced did you know about that?
No, I didn't even really know that list was happening. But Laura Snapes, who wrote the piece about the Raincoats in it, she read my book in advance. She was one of the people who helped me edit it. So thank you, Laura, also for helping me edit it. And she saw me present at, there's this conference in Seattle it used to be called the EMP conference. Now it's just called the Pop Conference. And it's kind of a place where music journalists and like music scholars come and present on a topic every year in Seattle. Anyway, I did a presentation at it this year and last year, related to my Raincoats research. And Laura was, I think, she was at both of them.
Okay.
So she had an idea of my take on the Raincoats. I wasn't super surprised to see the shout out, but I was
still nice.
Very grateful.
Yeah. When did you first hear the Raincoats album?
Well, I first heard the Raincoats when my friend Neil put them on a mix CD for me. Thanks, Neil. And I don't remember anything else that was on the mix other than the Raincoats.
How old were you? You remember that?
I was in college.
Okay.
I think I was 19, which was around the time that I met him. And so that's, I think when the CD came into my life. So in the grand scheme of things, a very long time after the Raincoats album was released, but I think a perfect time for a person or a woman to discover that band. So,
and what song did he have on there?
Lola.
Okay. And what did you...
Not my favorite song on the album anymore, but it changed my life. So
why was it the song that you remembered out of all the other songs on the mix CD?
I mean, the rest of the music kind of disappeared. I feel like something I write in the book is that I feel like the Raincoats music just feels like a reflection of me or something. And from the first time I heard it, I feel like I related to it in this really like almost like scary way. Like it just felt like something I had been searching for my whole life but didn't know. And even in a cover song, I feel like that comes through. Kind of the imperfection of it is really relatable.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah. I interviewed this artist, Rachel Aggs, who plays in bands in London called Shopping, Trash Kit, and Sacred Paws about the Lola cover in particular. Yeah. And something she told me was that it almost doesn't even matter who wrote that song when you listen to the Raincoats play Lola. And I think it's true. Their cover kind of just in a way rewrites the song. And yeah, it just captured me.
Yeah. And after you heard that, did you then go seek the album out immediately?
Yeah, I want to say I probably, at the time, I was doing college radio at WNYU 89.1 FM, which was a big part of my life at the time, and still is. But I imagine I probably found the rest of the album at WNYU. Okay. That's where I got a lot of my music from at that time, which I guess must have been around 2009. Okay. So not that long ago in the grand scheme of things, but I'm 28, so I must have been kind 19 then.
Yeah. Lifetime.
Yeah. Feels like forever ago.
Did you have an immediate reaction to the whole album?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like one of those things where it's hard for me to remember what like life before that band was a part of my life.
Okay,
you know?
pivotal.
Yeah, for sure. But there are some bands like that, like when you think of your favorite band, can you imagine a time when you didn't know them? Yeah. Like, especially like there are certain bands that I feel like are almost beyond being my favorite band. Like my life, they're just part of my life. My life almost like at times like revolves around them, or they've just like shaped me into the person that I am. So it's hard to imagine that I ever didn't know them.
And what were your musical tastes like, say, before hearing that album?
Well, in that vein? I would say that at the time that I was getting into the Raincoats, my taste in music was broadening faster than it ever had before because I was involved with college radio. Okay. So yeah, in general, I feel like my taste in music was becoming more like avant-garde and experimental, and the Raincoats fit in with that more so than getting into punk or anything.
How did it speak to you as a young woman? Was it the lyrics, the music?
I think it
combination.
Combination, but the music itself, I think, because some of the lyrics, I feel like you actually can't even really hear them until you look at the lyric sheet. But the music itself, I dive into this, like, it's something that, so when I listened to the music when I was younger, like, I knew that, like, I related to it and I could, like, feel it inside of me that, like, the music felt like it was a part of me or something. But I couldn't have articulated it really. Yeah. And so that was something that I really wanted to figure out when I was writing the book. I wanted to figure out, like, why does this music move me so much? Because on like a visceral level, I feel that it does, but I couldn't totally articulate it at first. And so throughout the course of working on the book, I tried to investigate that as deeply as I could. And I talk a lot in the book about kind of like the nonlinearity of the way the Raincoats play, the episodic nature of it, and I think that has something to do with it.
Were you playing music yourself? Did you musician?
No, I've never considered myself a musician. I
non-musician.
I played the violin when I was younger, and I took guitar lessons when I was younger, and so I can play a guitar. I was never in really a band or anything, but my sister and I and our friend Steven have a noise project that actually I think is over, but yeah, not really. No, I never played music. I always wanted to be a writer. From the time I was really young.
Well, how old were you?
I guess
you realized that? And
I guess
why?
I was like 5.
Okay.
When I realized I wanted to be a writer because, I was in Daisies, which is like the first level of Girl Scouts, and this woman came to a Girl Scouts meeting and she read to us from a children's storybook that she wrote about these like anthropomorphic soap bubbles that hang out on the rainbow. It was really psychedelic in retrospect, and I was just completely like captivated by the fact that this woman had like created a story, like she created a universe. And I thought that was really cool. And I think, at the time, I think I was always shy and kind of like introverted, and the idea that you could do that within yourself probably spoke to me even at that young age. And then when I was, so I kind of always had in my head that I wanted to be a writer. And then when I was in middle school, I grew up on Long Island, and there was an active music scene where I was from. And so I started getting into music, and was at Tower Records and came across a copy of AP Alternative Press. And was like, here it is. This is my calling. Music journalism. My interest in writing, my interest in music. Here it is. And so, that was it.
Were you kind of aware before that there was music journalism, that you could do that?
I don't think so. No, I think that was really like my introduction to the concept of it. Alternative press, press. Pop punk and emo of the early 2000s.
Was that your jam at the time?
Yeah, definitely. Growing up on Long Island around that time, that was what was going on around me, and it was definitely my introduction to alternative music and like anything beyond the radio. Definitely for me started there.
And when you started playing guitar and violin, was that just like a hobby? Parents made you, or what?
Well, violin was definitely kind of like everyone in school had to play an instrument, and so I played violin and guitar. Yeah, around the time I started getting into bands on Long Island and like pop punk of the early 2000s, that definitely coincided with me wanting to take guitar lessons. There's also a music school in our town called South Shore Music. Everyone took guitar lessons with John. Shouts to John. And so I took guitar lessons, but then one day I went I went to Italy with my family when I was like 16, and I came back and John had quit. And that was the end of guitar lessons.
Did you know enough chords by the time he quit?
Yeah. I definitely did. And I still do. I used to have a guitar like in my apartment that sometimes I would like pick up for fun, but I got rid of it.
So once you see this AP and you're going to be a music journalist, like, do you have like, okay, well, what do I need to do now?
Well, I feel like it was kind of not really like a straight line after that. I definitely at times, because when I was younger, I was definitely discouraged a little bit by what I could perceive at the time as like sexism in music, and felt maybe like music journalism wasn't something I could actually do when I was a teenager. So I changed my course a few times. But by the time I was a freshman in college, I'd found my way back to music journalism. I definitely, from the time I was like 15, 16, I think because I had so many friends in my town who were musicians, and they were just doing what they wanted to do. They wanted to be in bands, so they had practice and they played shows and they made records. And they put on shows in people's backyards and stuff. And my sister and I did that too when we were in high school. I think being around people doing stuff like that, I was like, well, I want to be a journalist. Like, I should just start it right now. And so it was this kind of like self-starting DIY mentality. I don't know if I would have articulated it as DIY at the time, but so when I was 15, 16, I just started writing. I got involved with the high school newspaper, and I got involved with writing for the Alt Weekly on Long Island. And I should mention that like all of this stuff, I have a twin sister and we did it together. So it was all me and Liz doing all this stuff together. and wrote for the Alt Weekly, would go to record stores in the city. I feel lucky that I was able to go into the city when I was a teenager too. Would go to record stores and find like the music papers and magazines that were given away for free and email them and ask if I can review records and stuff. Like there's this one, shouts to IRT magazine. I wrote record reviews for them when I was high school and college. And really just went for it from a really young age.
And it was all music writing from the beginning. You knew that's what.
When I was in high school, I entertained the idea of being a fashion journalist for a little while. Again, because I really think that I couldn't see myself like reflected in music or music journalism, like especially coming up in a kind of like in that early 2000s mutated emo pop punk scene.
Very male.
Really like a lot of sexism going on. So yeah, I feel like I was turned off for a year, really like a year or two to the idea of that, and in my head thought about fashion journalism, thought about investigative reporting. I was the editor-in-chief of the high school newspaper when I was in high school, and did like a lot of investigative journalism in high school.
What would you investigate in high school?
Oh, me and my sister, we investigated all sorts of stuff. Like one that comes to mind is like there was this policy that was put into effect when we were seniors in high school, where at the spring concert, usually soloists would stand up and everyone would applaud for them individually. And for some reason, there was this policy that was put into place that soloists at the spring concert weren't allowed to stand for like applause. Anyway, it was very controversial because all the music kids were like, well, every morning in homeroom we have to sit through them listing off all of the athletes that like did well in the game the day before. So why do we have to listen to all of these athletes get acknowledged over the loudspeaker in the morning, but at the spring concert we can't acknowledge our peers who played a solo? Anyway, this is very convoluted, but we my sister and I interviewed like the principal and the superintendent and like all of these people, and we got the policy changed.
Cool.
Everyone was psyched.
Woodward burned.
That was one example, but there were all sorts of things.
So you could have gone that way easily. Investigative journalism.
Maybe I still will. Who knows?
So did it make it easier doing this in tandem with your sister?
I think so. I mean, I feel like being twins who have a fairly similar career path, like, I think we encouraged each other a lot growing up. And maybe we just felt emboldened because we were doing it together. Yeah. I'm sure she would agree with that too. We went to different colleges. We had to like break up for college or something because our lives were so intertwined.
Was that a parental choice?
In high school. I feel like we knew we had to go to separate colleges. Like when we were in kindergarten or nursery school, we would like stand in the corner holding hands and not talk to anyone. And I think we were a little scared of like doing that in college. So we like knew we had to go our separate ways for a few years. But yeah, I think we definitely encouraged each other to do more at a young age, for sure.
And how was that once you get to NYU without your sister?
Oh,
was that a big learning curve?
Yeah. Yeah, the first month of college. So I was in college from 2007 to 2011, and the first month of college was the first time we'd ever been away from each other for that long. And it was definitely hard. Yeah.
Were you like on the phone and
texting
all the time?
Texting nonstop, yeah. I mean, still texting nonstop.
Where did she go to school?
She went to Boston University.
Okay. And she pursued journalism?
Okay, yeah, she studied journalism in school, and so did I.
Okay. And what, print journalism?
I double majored in journalism and English literature. So it was kind of all words, but a mix of things. Okay. Yeah.
And so
print journalism, though. Okay. Yeah.
And you know for sure now I'm going to do music journalism.
Yeah, I'm really lucky because the summer after my freshman year of college, I got an internship at Rolling Stone and really never looked back.
Yeah.
It was so the past 10 years, or I guess 9 years.
Okay. So that was the big break or first break.
I definitely feel really fortunate to have done that internship. I mean, I was like 18, and through the internship had some opportunities to write for their website and stuff. And I interned at Rolling Stone and Spin. And when I was in college, I wrote for the Village Voice and Nylon and pretty much anyone that would let me. I was like very actively freelancing, really from the time I was 16.
Okay.
And that's kind of what when people ask, you know, how can you write about music? It's kind of just go for it obsessively. Yeah. Really. Yeah. You have to write and write and write for whoever will let you. That's kind of what I tell people.
Yeah. Did you have a particular focus or whatever people would let you write?
I guess I've always skewed more towards the rock side of the spectrum. Not exclusively. I write about electronic music and I've written about rap sometimes. And experimental stuff. But no, I try to keep an open mind when I'm covering things. I definitely write about women more often than I write about men. I actually maybe I broke my streak, but a couple of months ago I looked and I was like, I haven't reviewed an album by a man for Pitchfork in a year. Yeah.
Well, nothing wrong with that. Right?
No. It was just an observation.
Yeah. Because no one would say to a man, you've only reviewed men.
Yeah.
Yeah. In a year, right?
Yeah.
So, at Rolling Stone, so were these like actual like learning internships?
I learned a lot. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Especially I think something that I'm grateful for is that, the internships that I did when I was in school were web internships, which at the time, I'm not sure how things have changed now, but at the time, offered me opportunities to write for the websites where I'm not sure if I had been interning for the print magazine, I would have been able to do that or not. So I definitely learned a ton from both of those experiences and was really grateful for them, even though I wasn't paid. Yeah. I was grateful for them. I had paid jobs outside of them.
And how do you see yourself growing your writing? Are you able to say, are you getting feedback from mentors? Are you able to see it yourself?
Yeah, working on the Raincoats book, it almost felt like doing a thesis or something. Okay. In feminist punk. And yeah, I felt like it was very like life-changing.
Had you always wanted to write a book?
I always wanted to write a book about the Raincoats.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
I interviewed the Raincoats for this website called Altered Zones in 2011, which was like an offshoot website of Pitchfork that I contributed to before I was on staff at Pitchfork. And so I interviewed the Raincoats for Altered Zones when they reissued Out of Shape in 2011. And I remember interviewing them and thinking it was really wild that no one had written a book about them, and just thinking, I want to write a book about the Raincoats one day because they're such an important band. They're so formative for so many of my favorite bands, so many of my favorite movements in music. That seemed like a travesty that no one had ever written a book about them. So yeah, and then I feel like I kind of grew up with the 33 and a third series being like present from, like I remember going to readings of 33 and a thirds when I was a freshman in college. Okay. So I knew that was something that I could pitch because they've always had a pretty transparent proposal process. Whereas I think a lot of the book publishing industry can seem a little mystified if you don't know how to get an agent or something. So
this is very clear.
It's on their website. Anyone can propose one. So the idea of proposing a 33 and a third on the Raincoats was something I had in my mind for a while before I did it.
And talk about the structure of the book. How did you decide on the structure? And was that there from the beginning of the proposal?
No, when I proposed the book, actually, I couldn't have anticipated what the story would have been because no one had ever told the full story before. So my proposal definitely was not what the book ended up being. I feel like as I did research and interviewed people and went through the band's archives, the full story kind of revealed itself to me. And I definitely changed the format of the book once I started learning more about who these women were as people and the things they had experienced in their lives and how their life experiences had influenced their approach to music. I wanted to tell the story of the record, but I also wanted to tell the story of who they were as people because I felt like when I listened to the record, I could hear 4 really individual people contributing. And so, yeah, I wanted to tell the story of who they were in addition to what the record sounds like. Yeah. And I didn't imagine that from the outset because I didn't really know anything about them. The singer, guitarist, Ana de Silva is from Portugal and the drummer, Palmolive, is from Spain. And learning about their backgrounds, and how their backgrounds made the act of punk so purposeful. It definitely changed the way I thought about their music. And I hope that the book maybe just adds more meaning to the record for people.
And there was something I might misquote, but Anna said, "Are you about you making this book personal?"
Oh, Gina said that. Yeah.
Because you see that with some of the 33 and thirds, where the author is very much a part of the story. Yeah,
I wanted to do that as little as possible, just because there's so much to say about them and the record. So I tried to keep myself out of it. I mean, I write a little bit about my experience, but I also felt like, because I felt like the music was like a reflection of myself, that the whole book felt personal in a way. When you listen to music and you feel like your experience is being broadcast back to you, that's really heavy.
Yeah. And plus, this is the first book on them.
It is, yeah.
So it's not like there's 20 books out and people can
so,
refer to those.
The book could have been 5 times as long, it could have been way longer, but I like the fact that it's short because they are, for some people, a fairly obscure band. So I like the idea that you could finish the book, even if maybe you're not familiar with
listen
them.
to the record as you read.
Yeah.
And what would you like people to sort of walk away from the book after reading about the band, the album?
I mean, I think the Raincoats they were the first group. I write this a few times, but they're the first band of women the first band of punk women to actively call themselves feminists. And they were kind of one of the first bands they were one of the first bands to take punk more as an impulse than a specific sound.
Okay.
So it's the beginning of post-punk. Their music was so formative or influenced so many different movements that followed. Like you could draw a straight line from the Raincoats and their version of punk to Riot Girl, queercore, indie pop. Kurt Cobain is a huge fan, so maybe grunge too. There's so many different facets of independent music that they either directly influenced or were just preceded in a really interesting way that I hope people just walk away understanding their historical significance,
Why do you think? Because if they do have those influences, they aren't more well known. Well, one thing was that the album went out of print. It was hard to get.
Yeah.
That's one thing.
I mean, you could ask that question of so many influential bands, and so many of them who are women.
Yeah.
I think it's really fascinating that this book is coming out at the same time as the first documentary about the Slits, who the Slits the first all-female punk band who really inspired the Raincoats to form. I think women are left out of history. Women are not, haven't historically written punk histories. I mean, some women have, but the Raincoats have often been, I mean, I say this in the beginning, but they've been a footnote or maybe a couple of paragraphs in a book. But I see them as really in being one of the bands of their era whose music has endured and like stood the test of time way more than a lot of their contemporaries, male or female, which I'm sure is why I was attracted to them to begin with.
Because it still sounds fresh. Like you can't say exactly when it came out.
Exactly. And I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that they're just incredible songwriters. Their lyrics feel classic and timeless to me. Their music is like unusual and abrasive sometimes, but also always really melodic.
Did you, when you first heard the album, how did it connect to you then, or were you aware of it? Like, to what extent?
I would say probably more like intuitively, knowing that they were a band of women. I don't think at the time, in a lot of writing about the Raincoats, people comment on their feminist lyrics, but on that record, I mean, they're a feminist band, definitely, but on that record, there's really only one song, Off Duty Trip, with explicitly feminist lyrics, and I think that's a really important song that, I mean, you could arguably say it's like the clearest predecessor to Riot Girl that we have. It's a song that was written by Vicky Aspinall, who is the violinist in the band. She wrote the song with her friend Caroline Scott, who is not even in the Raincoats. She was just a friend of the Raincoats. And it was inspired by a news story of the time about a woman who was raped in a park, and the soldier who committed the crime, he wasn't charged, he was a soldier, and so his status as a soldier was held up. And so at the time when I first heard the Raincoats album, I don't think I realized what that song was about. It was definitely more the form of the music that spoke to me. The fact that it was kind of imperfect but beautiful at the same time spoke to me.
And I think your book sort of makes the point too, that the fact that these women together making music, that was feminist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, even the lyrics weren't explicitly.
And just the fact that when you listen to the record, you can hear them all working together, I think is also really powerful. And that's something that, as I dug deeper, I was like, this is why this record spoke to me, because I'm listening to it and you can hear, I mean, when they sing together, I think it's really powerful, because at the time, and I didn't know this until I started researching more, but at the time there wasn't a ton of camaraderie among female musicians. There wasn't really like a feminist scene or anything. But within their band, I feel like within their music, you can hear four people. Their music sounds really egalitarian, I think, and it sounds like communal, like they're kind of speaking their own language within it.
Yeah.
And that, I feel like, was something that I could feel, even if I couldn't like articulate why it was impacting me. And I think that has a lot to do with why their music just hit so hard when I first heard it.
What do you think about how the other albums of theirs play off each other, work together?
I love all of their records. I think they have said to me, and I think it's true, that as so they have 4 full-length records, and the third and the fourth, they were kind of like moving away from each other a little bit. So on the first record and the second record, I feel like it's the sound of these people like working together. Really, like they're just totally intertwined, you know? And that's kind of the power of it, I think, is that there's these different people who are working together, which is powerful in itself, and people who are really different from one another. work together to figure something out.
Imagine that.
Yeah. That's, I think, a really powerful aspect of the album. But yeah, and the later two albums, I think maybe they were more writing songs individually and bringing them to the table. I love those records. Moving and Looking in the Shadows. I think they're great and they all have really great songs on them. But yeah, they're moving away from each other a little bit maybe. Yeah. But yeah, there's some really good songs later in their catalog, like Don't Be Mean. Amazing. There's a song called Pretty. They have a lot of really good songs.
I'm going to have to investigate deeper. Is
Yeah.
there anything about the albums? No, I'm not going to ask that. Okay. I'm going to edit this too. Where do I want to go? Okay. I just lost my thought.
We were talking about the later albums.
Yes, the later albums.
There's also a song called Dance of Hopping Mad, which I tend to DJ a lot when I DJ places.
Okay. I was going to say, where do you think that... God, I can't believe it.
It's okay. I've been there.
Luckily, this isn't live, right?
Yeah.
I can't believe this never happens.
Well, I'm kind of curious, like, was there anything in the book that surprised you when you were reading it?
I don't think so. I guess...
Yeah. It's hard because people don't really know their story.
Yeah, wasn't familiar with their story.
Yeah, I guess no one really is.
Yeah, because I think the only song I had heard before was Off Duty. What's the...
Off Duty Trip?
Yeah, that was the only song I heard. I'm like, oh, okay, that's them.
Oh, wow.
And I think Fairy Tale Supermarket.
Fairy Tale in the Supermarket. Yeah, I think it's so interesting, too, how a song like... I mean, just last year or earlier this year... in the movie 20th Century Women, there's a whole scene revolving around, I mean, that movie takes place in the late 70s, but there's a scene centered around the song Fairy Tale in the Supermarket, which I think is so cool. And Greta Gerwig's monologue in that scene was basically improvised.
Okay, really?
It's so cool. I mean, I interviewed the director, Mike Mills, and part of that interview ran on Pitchfork earlier this year, but some of it is in the epilogue of the book. Yes. And he basically showed Greta Gerwig an essay that Greil Marcus wrote about the Raincoats in the early 80s. And she kind of was like jumping off from that. But I think the way that she kind of like spins it out is so cool. I honestly, when I saw that movie in the theaters, I had seen it. My friend Lindsay, shouts to Lindsay Zolads for helping me with this book. When I went to go see that movie, because my friend Lindsay was like, I saw this movie during like, I don't know if it was like the New York Film Festival or something. She saw it during one of the film festivals. She was like, there's a whole scene about the Raincoats. You have to see it. And I went to kind of like a press screener at a theater in Midtown Manhattan. And I almost fell out of my chair. I couldn't believe that a new movie in 2016 had a whole scene about Fairy Tale in the Supermarket, and not even a whole scene, but a really good scene. And also so early in the movie, it just blew my mind. I was like, who is this person who wrote this movie? And so I was like, I was like, I got to talk to this guy. And I'm glad that he generously offered some time.
Yeah. That's great. And also in 10 Things I Hate About You. Yeah,
that was cool. Honestly, like when I started working on this project, I really wanted to interview the woman who wrote 10 Things I Hate About You. And I'm very grateful to her for speaking to me, Kiwi Smith. I loved talking to her. And I think that scene is so fascinating and says so much about the Raincoats. Both of those movie scenes, I really think say a lot about the band. It's kind of rare that, I can't think of another example of like a cult band like the Raincoats being mentioned in these two mainstream movies and it being so honest and accurate, you know? Like that scene in 10 Things I Hate About You, it's like there's a secret that is shared between these two people, basically. And I think something I write in the book is like, I feel like when you meet someone, they know who the Raincoats are. You didn't expect them to know who a band like the Raincoats are. It's like goes from like square one to like square 3 or 4 of a friendship instantly. Like, it's like, okay, you get a lot of stuff that I get.
Yeah. We can skip a lot of, we just skipped a lot of stuff.
Yeah. We just got deep really fast, basically.
Yeah. How much research did you? How long was your research?
Oh gosh.
Wait, when did you send the proposal in?
I guess it was like March or April 2014.
Okay.
So I started working on it in spring 2014. The first time I went in November 2014 to go interview the band I had interviewed them in 2011 for the previous piece, but the first time I interviewed them for the book was November 2014, and they were really generous with their time. They were, I think, excited that someone was writing a book about them, and they were excited. Yeah. And they also kept so much stuff, like newspaper clippings, reviews, positive and negative, which was really helpful. They didn't just like save the stuff that made them look good. I mean, that would have been hard because a lot of the press was kind of I mentioned this in the book too, but kind of either loved them or hated them. There wasn't a ton of in between.
Okay.
So it was really interesting and also kind of daunting to like sift through all of this stuff, because I basically went to their house and sat at their kitchen table and scanned all of these reviews and interviews and zines, clippings from the UK music weeklies that they hadn't digitized. So I scanned like 200 pages on that trip. And they also, the band, provided me with like great photos too and video footage that they had, which was really helpful. And I feel really lucky that they did such a good job of keeping all that stuff. Yeah. So beyond that, that was the beginning. I had done some research before I went on that trip, but that was my first like big research trip for it. And when I came back, I spent a lot of time in the library the past 3 years, the NYU library. Even I'm a graduate, but I got an alumni membership to Bope's library and spent a lot of time there and on Rock's back pages, that thing.
Do you like the researching part and interviewing? Do you enjoy all that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to write another book. I want to write another book. I mean, I had enough material from my research from this project to write another book. So I'm hoping to pretty soon.
And was there anything that you had to leave out the book because because of space that you're just like,
That was definitely the hardest part. I mean, there were times when my draft of this book was like 2 times as long and I had to leave stuff out. Yeah. But I told myself I'm going to write another book. Okay. So
it's not
save some
to
of
waste.
Save some of it for the next one. But yeah, I think that was one of the primary challenges was keeping it short. But I think 33 1/3 books kind of work better when they're short. And mine is, I think, kind of long for a 33 1/3, honestly. But there's stuff on the cutting room floor for sure.
Well, it's a great read. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
George, and I would recommend it. And where's the best place they can get the book everywhere and to read like some of your writing? You're at Pitchfork.
Yeah, I'm
which we didn't even talk about that.
Oh yeah. Okay. That's kind of harder to talk about. I'm on staff at Pitchfork. I've worked there for the past 6 years, and you can find me on the internet. I'm easy to Google.
Search it.
Yeah, for better or worse. I'm easy to Google. The book, I would recommend buying it from your local independent bookstore.
Support indie.
Not, you could steal it from Barnes & Noble.
That works. Well, thank you, Jenn, for doing this. This was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much for talking to me.
Sure. I think what you're doing is great, and it's good to see getting great music out there to more people.
Thanks. I hope that more people listen to the Raincoats and understand their historical significance.
Yes, excellent. There you have it, my conversation with Jenn Pelly. Again, I highly recommend the book. Buy her book, buy the Raincoats music, Read the book as you listen to the music. My suggestion, go to her publisher's website, which is 333sound.com. Plus, you should check out her writing at Pitchfork, so I will put a link to that in the show notes. I am online, talkmusictalk.com, for more podcast information and to stream every single episode. I am also on Instagram. If you choose to follow me there, please do, at This Is Boice, and some call to actions for you. If you enjoy this episode with Jenn, do me a favor and share it on social media. Email it to a friend. Leave a 5-star rating and or review wherever you are listening, especially on iTunes, because this all helps to grow the Talk Music Talk audience. Also, download the Talk Music Talk app. It is free for iPhone and Android, wherever you like to get your apps, or you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, pretty much everywhere. You can also find the podcast on SoundCloud, starting with episode 100 with Carlos D. That's Carlos Dangler, former bassist of Interpol. That's episode 100 on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/This Is Boice. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, and there will be a next time. This one's for you, Liz.